Hello, Shad. I saw your video the other day on gun knives and gun swords, and I was pretty interested. You asked a lot of questions. They seemed to be more directed towards Scalagram, but I kind of noticed that I actually knew some of the answers while watching the video, so I figured I'd make a video in reply. The first thing I think might be a big difference is simply cost of the gun knife or gun sword. Swords were decently expensive and guns were decently expensive, so when you combine them, you probably combine the costs to some extent, maybe even more. And as it's pretty well known, cost drives a lot of technological advances in what becomes popular and what doesn't. For example, in the United States military, we use ceramic plates over Kevlar, which is less effective than dragon scales armor or overlapping metal plates, but it's much cheaper. Another example is that in the Army, our vehicles are designed to use a less refined form of jet fuel, but instead we run diesel in them. This causes issues with the engine. They wear out faster, but the Army has decided that it was more cost effective to supply one type of fuel and pay for the extra repairs than to attempt to supply two different types of fuel. So cost drives a lot of things. So even if this gun sword, gun knife was an extremely practical and just brilliant idea, it may not have been affordable enough for it to really take hold. Also, I question the durability of it. The more moving parts you have in an item, the bigger chance there is for something to go wrong. Also, I wonder how well those pieces would hold together with the jarring that a sword-on-sword contact might have. While I'm aware this isn't probably too much more than the actual shock of the gun firing itself, I still wonder how long that would last. Plus, I can only imagine trying to clean that thing after you've shot it. You mentioned the forward weight potentially being an issue. I personally don't see this being too much of an issue because this is a real gun, but it's completely empty. I don't have a prop, so I had to use a real one. The forward weight issue isn't necessarily a big problem, especially in the gun knives, because I don't think that's a lot of weight, and in self-defense situations you're not sitting there holding a steady posture trying to use your sights. Very rarely in self-defense do you actually end up using your sights. It's what we call point shooting, where you just kind of point it at them, maybe look down the side of your gun and take your shots, because there's not a luxury of time in combat scenarios. So you wouldn't really need to hold some steady posture long enough to try to find your sights, line them up, take that shot to the point that this is going to wear you out, especially since it's only a single shot. Speaking of which, the single shot flintlock pistols weren't particularly known for accuracy, so even if you took the time to get a solid posture, find your sights or whatever they used on these swords, I don't think there probably wasn't a sight. I'm not so sure that you would really hit where you're aiming anyway, so I think point shooting would definitely apply here. So it might be better just to draw it, take your shot at your target that's a few meters away. If there's more than one or he's still coming at you, then move on to the bladed section of your combination weapon. As for rifles, the bayonet doesn't make as big a difference. This is empty too, got my chamber flag. The bayonet doesn't make as big of an issue because your rifle alone weighs about 8 pounds, a little bit more with a loaded magazine, but you throw in an optic or a forward grip, you've added weight to it. So I don't think you're going to notice too much the bayonet on the end. I've never actually shot a rifle with a bayonet on it. However, I have practiced the different bayonet techniques, and you're correct, it is used very similar to a polearm. It's used a lot of strikes with the stock and slashes and thrusts with the bayonet. But anyway, where the bayonet does make a difference is accuracy, and this is probably the largest reason that's removable, is that while it's on, I've been told that it affects the way the weapon recoils and kind of the balanced weapon, which is something to note with the design of the guns and the swords, and that might greatly affect the balance and weight of your sword to a not so practical degree. But anyway, back to the bayonets. The weight is said to affect the recoil, and like I said, I've never shot with a bayonet on a rifle. However, I have shot with a grenade launcher on the bottom of the rifle. And that sits a little bit farther back, sitting back here closer to the magazine well. And I can tell from experience, it does greatly affect the accuracy of a rifle. My scores weren't so high that round. Just because it affects the balance and the weight distribution and the recoil of the rifle. However, probably the most prominent thing I noticed about it, at least with the gun knives, is the handle. In most blades, your handle runs parallel to your edge. For example, with your longsword, now it's just a sparring sword, your handle runs the same, your handle runs the same direction as your blades. So holding onto it is pretty, no pun intended, straightforward. Even in less conventional weapons like the kukri, it's not parallel, it's not perfectly straight, but it's along the same direction of your handle. So it makes it pretty simple to hold for thrusts or cuts. Go into more exotic weapons, and you've got the karambit, and again, not perfectly parallel, but it runs along the same plane. So it's fairly simple to use.
It should be noted here that when I say simple to use, I mean ergonomically simple. It feels correct in the hand and isn't awkward.
Even hatchets or tomahawks or axes, if I can get it out, even they apply to this role. While it does seem like they don't because it's out here, your edge is actually parallel, or mostly parallel, to your handle for your strikes. The problem with the gun knives is that they aren't. You've got a handle that runs down and a knife that runs forward. While it makes sense to point your blade in the same direction as your barrel, once you've expended your ammo, it's going to be difficult to try to strike with something like this, to try to do these cuts, and it'd just be really awkward. You'd want to have to grip it something more like this, which I still think would be quite an awkward grip. The slide just holding it. And most of the guns didn't look like they would support that grip even as well as this thing does. So in that sense, I think it'd be better off to carry them separately. And I know you mentioned this, Shad, but you mentioned that you'd have to take your shot, put your weapon away, and then draw your knife or your sword. And I don't necessarily think so, because as I said, it's point shooting, so I think you'd be completely okay drawing your pistol with your left hand. And also, I can shoot, I'm right-handed, right-eye dominant, but I can shoot a pistol pretty effectively left-handed, even if I'm actually using my sights, just because I simply have to move the weapon over so it's more on my right side and use my sights. Rifle's a little bit more difficult, but still not bad. And again, back to the point shooting, you just draw it, take a shot at your target that's a couple meters away, and at the same time you have your knife out, so as soon as you take that shot, you're ready to go. And then from there, if you need to, you can drop your pistol or try to reholster it, because ultimately your life is obviously the goal to protect here, not your weapons. You did mention putting the blade more perpendicular to the handle, as you had mentioned, but then you've probably got a little bit more weight here on one side. Even if you evenly distributed that weight, I think it would still add a lot of weight to this area of the sword and kind of throw off the balance, as I mentioned earlier. Now, what I think might have been more effective than a knife gun or a sword gun would have been an axe gun. And this kind of defeats the problem of the handle running perpendicular to the edge. So if you take a hatchet, you wield it like this. So I'm not saying shoot it or anything like this, but simply have your trigger back here, and you grab the head, and the barrel is your handle. So you can take your shot, and then just simply flip it around to use it. While this is a little bit more handling and manipulating of the weapon in your hand back and forth, I think it would be the best sacrifice, so you're still able to effectively use the axe or the hatchet as an axe or hatchet. Plus you'd still get the effect of it as a tool or as a weapon. The potential problem I see is that would require you to have a hollow handle, and this could be a durability problem. However, if you had your handle as a wood, the interior of the barrel would be a metal, and maybe even put some metal rivets through your wood, or even straps around it to help increase durability and keep it from bending or warping during striking, I think that'd be a pretty easy fix. I haven't done any research on it, but I'd be curious to see if maybe that was a thing, because to me that seems a lot more effective than a knife gun or a sword gun. Anyway, this is just my reply to your video, just kind of my opinion. Thanks for watching.